morning, Chamber members. Welcome to Monday Minute for Monday, July 13th, 2020. We're so happy to have with us today our past chair of the Board of Directors, Dallin Oberg, who of course many of you will know as a partner in Holm Raich Oberg, a chartered professional accountants firm here in the Battlefords. Dallin, welcome. Thanks for being with us.
Well, thanks for the invite.
So we wanted to talk about the government programming for business. We know that through COVID there has been probably 4 key programs that the government has announced to support business. Have you had clients take up the opportunity to take advantage of the programs?
I would say most. If they haven't taken up the program, there's questions about the program. The wage subsidy is a big thing, as most businesses want to keep their staff employed. So that's one. The rental, commercial rent subsidy was one that came up. And of course the CBA, the Canadian bank account, the 40 grand loan was a popular one as well. So it depends. As Mr. Trudeau announced the program, about 10 o'clock in the morning my phone would start ringing with questions about the program.
And then the next week call back, because I'm sure there's been modifications to all of them. And
they changed partway through.
Yeah, it's been difficult to track that for sure. So on the commercial rent assistance program specifically, we've been hearing certainly that there are many challenges, and I know from nationally our conference calls talk about how poor the program has been and what the uptake has been very low, if at all. So have you been finding the same thing, that a lot of people aren't qualifying for the program?
A lot of people aren't qualifying for the program. They're providing the information. The landlord has to apply. Yeah. The tenants have to supply some financial information to see if they hit the criteria. But if they don't hit the criteria, then they can't qualify. And it's a pretty steep drop in revenues to get there. But also some landlords are calling and asking, should I offer this to my tenants? Because of the, excuse me, because the effect of they got bills to pay.
Yeah. So
how does that work out? You're not mandatorily required to do it, but most people want to look and see if they can help.
So the fact that the federal government announced that for federally regulated employees, that the 12-week layoff period could be extended so that employers wouldn't have to pay that money. And at the time that we're recording this, there's no provincial announcement yet, but will that impact businesses a lot if they don't extend that?
So after that temporary layoff period, then you have to make a decision of whether you're bringing them back or whether they're laid off permanently.
Right.
If they're laid off permanently, then you have the vacation pay that needs to be paid out. There could be some severance paid depending on specific regulations, how long they've been with the employer and whatnot. But hopefully as the economy starts opening up, we're going to bring the employees back in, things will be all right. But it still might take some time to generate the same revenues, or
with less people.
With less people, or the business might have found some efficiencies, so is it worthwhile? I hate to say that, but it's something to look at, and a lot of people are reevaluating their business to say, what can't I go without to survive? Because they keep talking about a second wave, and people are looking at that saying, if there's a second wave, what can we do?
Yeah. And have you had a sector or a group of businesses that have either not qualified or have struggled with meeting the criteria for the program? Like, is there anything that's kind of
which
falling through any of them, one in particular, if there's anything that kind of comes to mind that's a challenge?
I think as Mr. Trudeau's announced the program, they've come back and said, look, you're leaving this group out. Okay. So there has been various groups along the way that have been left out, and that's why you see so many modifications to programs, yeah. Because they realized, oh, that wasn't the intent, but the criteria we had. So most businesses are still there. Ideal loss with farming. Some of the farm programs aren't necessarily as generous as others, but that's what the government has in place. But some have been left out. The majority of people have been covered now.
It's interesting on the ag side. I've heard too that most of the small farmers are not necessarily able to tap into them. That it really was meant more for the larger. I don't know if that's accurate or not, but I've heard some of the small farmers have been feel that they're left out. They don't meet that criteria.
There's lots where they're not incorporated and they're still proprietor, and because of that they don't have payroll numbers. And so I'll take the CBA account loan for 40 grand that had a payroll requirement to it. Now that's further been a change, modified, but that's an example of one where they were left out because of the situation. Yeah. Many stockyards or livestock yards were closed. They couldn't deliver their cattle to the yards to sell, but they still got to make their bill payments.
Well, and they have to feed the cattle, right? They can't leave them there. Yeah. So if you had a word of advice to somebody, we know that there are obviously accountants in town that can support people. We know that through CBRN, the Canadian Business Resilience Network, there's a phone service with professional accountants across the country that small businesses that may not have a regular accountant that they see can get access to that. Is there anything that you would suggest that businesses do?
CRA or Canada, the government has a website for COVID response. Every day it's changing, the layout's changing because they're providing more details. First I'd say talk to your accountant, talk to your professional team, talk to your banker to see what they can offer. But double check that website, look at the rules. As more clarification is given, it's something we can go to and use.
Yeah. We've been told, of course, that CRA is wanting to work with businesses and people to make sure they aren't offside of the rules. So we're hoping that once they start doing those checks after the fact that things go smoothly for them. So any help they can get, right? I mean, the best advice is to make sure that you're informed. Yeah, right, for sure. Yeah. Anyway, we'd like to take this opportunity to thank Dallin for being with us today, and we wish you a great week in business. Take care, and we'll see you next week.